In 2005, a scrappy, low-budget film about an American student who gets swept into the brutal, tribal world of English football hooliganism arrived in theaters almost unnoticed. Directed by Lexi Alexander, it never had a huge marketing push, and it never cracked the box office charts in any meaningful way. But Green Street Hooligans refused to disappear. Word of mouth, home video, and eventually streaming turned it into a cult phenomenon, then a genuine classic, the kind of film that shows up on underrated movies lists 2 decades later, and still gets quoted by fans who were barely alive when it came out. It made a star out of a young actor who would go on to lead one of the biggest television dramas of the 2010s. It gave a former Frodo Baggins the chance to prove he could do something completely different. And it built its supporting cast out of British character actors who would spend the next 20 years quietly becoming some of the most reliable working performers in the industry. The story itself was simple but effective. An American journalism student wrongly expelled from Harvard flees to London to stay with his sister and her family, where he's pulled into the world of the Green Street Elite, the football firm attached to West Ham United by his charismatic and dangerous brother-in-law. It's a film about loyalty, tribalism, and the pull of belonging to something bigger than yourself, themes that clearly resonated with audiences far more than the modest opening weekend numbers suggested they would. Now, in 2026, more than 2 decades after the Green Street Elite first marched onto screen, it's worth asking, what actually happened to this cast? Who kept climbing, who stepped back, and who simply kept doing the steady, unglamorous work that keeps a career alive for 20 years? Let's go through them one by one. When Green Street Hooligans came out, Elijah Wood was fresh off The Lord of the Rings, a trilogy that had turned him into one of the most recognizable young actors on the planet. Taking the lead role of Matt Buckner, an ordinary American student who gets pulled into London's hooligan subculture, was a deliberate swerve away from the gentle, wide-eyed heroism of Frodo. It set the tone for the rest of Wood's career, which has been defined less by chasing blockbusters and more by seeking out smaller, stranger, more independent projects. That pattern has held right through to 2026. Wood, now 45, has spent the last several years bouncing between horror, dark comedy, and genre filmmaking, much of it produced through his own company, Spectre Vision, which he built specifically to support unconventional projects that studios wouldn't otherwise greenlight. In 2025, he appeared in the horror hit The Monkey, and this year, he's back on screens in Ready or Not 2. Here I Come, the sequel to the horror comedy that reunited him with a former The Faculty co-star. He's also kept a foot in animation and voice work, and he showed up at the 2026 Sundance Film Festival supporting new projects in development. Perhaps most exciting for longtime fans, Wood has dropped increasingly encouraging hints about a possible return to Middle-earth in The Lord of the Rings, The Hunt for Gollum, the Andy Serkis-directed film expected around 2027, suggesting the door to Frodo Baggins isn't fully closed after all these years. On the personal side, Wood married Danish producer Mette Marie Kongsd on New Year's Eve 2024, and the couple has built a life together away from a spotlight that once seemed impossible for him to escape as a child star. 2 decades after playing an outsider thrown into a violent new world in Green Street, Wood has become something of an industry outsider by choice. An actor who picks projects for their creative interest rather than their box office ceiling, and who still, remarkably, has fans wondering whether he'll pick up the ring one more time. If there's one performance from Green Street Hooligans that cemented an actor's future stardom, it's Charlie Hunnam's. As Pete Dunham, the magnetic, dangerous leader of West Ham's Green Street elite firm, Hunnam brought a coiled intensity that made it obvious he was destined for leading man status. 3 years later, he'd land the role that would define the next decade of his career, Jax Teller in Sons of Anarchy, a performance that earned him multiple award nominations and turned him into one of television's most bankable leading men. Hunnam, now 46, has spent the years since building an eclectic and often surprising filmography: Pacific Rim, Crimson Peak, The Lost City of Z, King Arthur, Legend of the Sword, Triple Frontier, and Guy Ritchie's The Gentleman among them. He's also known for a genuinely dramatic career decision, stepping away from the lead role in 50 Shades of Grey after being cast, citing the toll that his relentless work schedule was taking on him. It's the kind of choice that could have derailed a career, but instead it became part of the Hunnam story, an actor who has been willing to walk away from major opportunities to protect his own well-being and creative interests. That instinct has paid off in a different way recently. In 2026, Hunnam earned some of the strongest reviews of his career for playing serial killer Ed Gein in Ryan Murphy's Netflix anthology series Monster, The Ed Gaines Story, a performance that landed him a nomination for Outstanding Performance by a Male Actor in a Television Movie or Limited Series at this year's Actor Awards. He's also set to return for the show's 4th season, and he'll next be seen opposite Matthew Macfadyen and Daniel Bruhl in the MGM Plus/BBC Le Caire adaptation, Legacy of Spies. Off-screen, Hunnam remains with jewelry designer Morgana McNellis, his partner since 2005, a relationship so enduring that when he referred to her as his wife at a recent awards show, it briefly sparked rumors the couple had quietly married. Whatever the truth of that, more than 20 years after Green Street, the through line of Hunnam's career is remarkably consistent. He picks roles for the challenge, not the paycheck, and he seems to know exactly how much of himself he's willing to give to the job. Claire Forlani brought warmth and steadiness to the role of Shannon Dunham, Pete's protective older sister and Matt's American host in London. By the time she took the role, Forlani had already been a recognizable Hollywood face for nearly a decade, having starred opposite Brad Pitt in Meet Joe Black and built a career across films like Mallrats and Basquiat. In the years since Green Street, her career has leaned more toward television, with recurring roles on shows like NCIS, Los Angeles, and international productions such as Domina. Forlani has also been notably candid about one chapter of her Hollywood experience. During the height of the #MeToo movement, she spoke publicly about having rejected unwanted advances from Harvey Weinstein on multiple occasions, describing it as an experience she managed to get away from. It's the kind of account that added context for many observers to how differently some actresses' career trajectories played out compared to their male peers. Now 54, Forlani has built a life that keeps a low public profile by design. She married Scottish actor Dougray Scott in 2007, and the couple, who met through a mutual friend and share a son together, have been together for nearly 2 decades, frequently praised as one of the more stable, drama-free partnerships in the industry. She continues to act steadily, favoring projects that let her stay largely out of the tabloid spotlight that once surrounded her. Marc Warren played Steve Dunham, Pete's older brother, a man who believed he had left his own violent past as a Green Street elite member behind him. Warren had already spent nearly 2 decades on British television by the time Green Street came out, with credits including The Vice and State of Play. True to the character's arc, Warren himself has spent his post-Green Street career largely rooted in British television rather than chasing Hollywood stardom, building an impressively varied resume that includes Band of Brothers, Hustle, Mad Dogs, The Musketeers, and Jonathan Strange and Mr. Norrell. That patience paid off in a major way in 2020, when Warren was cast as the title character in the ITV/PBS reboot of Van der Valk, playing the cynical but brilliant Amsterdam police detective. The series has become a genuine international hit, running for multiple seasons and giving Warren, now 59, arguably the most prominent leading role of his career decades after he first appeared on screen. It's a fitting turn for an actor who's always prioritized steady, character-driven work over flash, proof that sometimes the long game is the winning one. Ross McCall's Dave was the loyal, understated presence at Pete Dunham's side throughout Green Street, a friend who showed up when it mattered without needing the spotlight. That same quiet reliability has defined McCall's career in the 2 decades since. Rather than chasing one big breakout role, the Scottish actor, who first appeared on screen at just 13 years old, built a long, steady resume spanning Band of Brothers, White Collar, and more recently Suspicion, alongside Uma Thurman, The Offer for Paramount Plus, and a recurring role on Apple TV Plus' acclaimed series Silo. McCall, now 50, has also moved increasingly behind the camera, writing and directing his own features, including About Us, which screened at the Edinburgh Film Festival, and A Violent Man. He remains an active conservationist, supporting groups like Sea Shepherd and an elephant rescue organization in Northern California. More than 20 years after Green Street, Dave remains one of the earliest reminders that some of the film's strongest performances never needed to be the loudest. Geoff Bell didn't begin acting until he was 29, enrolling in a theater course at Morley College after years spent doing manual work to support his family. By the time Green Street Hooligans came along, he was already building a reputation for intense, intimidating performances, and his portrayal of Tommy Hatcher, a rival firm leader whose rage is fueled by grief, became one of the film's most memorable antagonist turns. That performance essentially set the template for the next 2 decades of Bell's career. Now 63, he has appeared in more than 50 films and television projects, repeatedly cast as gangsters, hard men, and morally compromised authority figures, including Rock'n'Rolla, War Horse, Kingsman, The Secret Service, Rogue One, A Star Wars Story, his Dar materials, and Top Boy. His long working relationship with director Guy Ritchie has continued into 2025's